Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to be painting a beautiful fall landscape painting. We're going to be focused on really being playful with the blending of our sky and doing some beautiful foliage down on the bottom half. Now today's class will use lots of different colors and we'll walk through all the painting supplies as we get started. A few of the painting supplies that you'll need is an array of acrylic paints. So feel free to grab whatever paints work best for you. And then one of the other things we can do is I want you to grab a set of brushes, small to large sizes that work for blending and detailed areas, as well as a cup of water to rinse your brushes and a small plate to mix colors. So feel free to grab all those items before we jump into the class together today. Now, one of the first things that we'll do in class is we're going to be identifying where our landscape is. And our landscape is really going to be taking up half of our picture today. Our sky will be the top half, and our landscape will be the bottom half. So we're going to mix a nice light blue and do a nice light blue back coating for the entire sky. And then we're really going to bring our sky to life with some fiery oranges and reds and turning those into purples. So it'll be really quite fun. And then we'll be playing with some texturing for our landscape scene in the foreground. Now you have choices during today's class. You're able to do different, if you want to do two tiers of mountains, if you wanted to do a lake, maybe we'll add a lake in. You can make some of those choices, okay? So I'll walk you through that as we go through this class. The first thing that I'm going to do is mix a light blue color together. So I'm going to take some of my blue acrylic paint today, put that right on my plate. And I'm also going to take some white paint. Now you can use acrylic paint or you can use any other mediums that you have. So there's a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. And I'm just going to grab one of the bigger brushes I have. You're going to have a lot of different types of brushes. You're going to have some flat tip brushes. You'll have some other brushes, but you can see here, I'm using kind of a larger tip today. So we'll go ahead and get our brush a little bit wet, and then we'll jump right in. And we're going to make a nice light blue color of choice. And the light blue will be able to, we're going to paint the whole top background, but we're going to first add a little bit of a landscaping line as our first step. So mix the light blue, a nice light blue color. And I'll mix that here with you. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue. I'm going to put it over here kind of near my white. I'm going to mix that together. And I want it to be a subtle light blue, which you can see here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, where do I want my landscape to be? Where do I want my edging to be for my mountain or hill? And sometimes to get more of a loosey-goose edging, just to kind of help us get started, you can kind of hold back further on your brush. Maybe that will be my landscape. Maybe that will be my today. Maybe it'll be just like that. So you can kind of pick and choose what works for you. Okay, so this is just a light blue. And then I'm going to paint everything above this, the light blue color. So I can change my landscape if I want to. It's no big deal. But this light blue is nice and smooth. Okay, so take a few minutes to paint that light blue in. Okay, and we're just going to continue to paint the entire top background, this light blue. Now we're going to be covering up a lot of this, so this is really like a backlit color. Does not have to be perfectly even. We're just doing some nice smooth brush strokes to do full coverage in this sky area. Keeping it fairly light. To play around a little bit, feel free, but nice and light in color. The lighter the better, because we're going to be adding a lot of other darker colors in this space. So we want this to be like a bit of brightness behind our clouds that we'll be adding in. So if something is a little too dark, just add a little bit of white in and blend that in. While acrylic's wet, you can easily merge and blend your colors together. So I'm going about this pretty quickly because our sky is going to be quite a process as well as the bottom. So I'm really just buzzing along and getting this filled in because we're going to be painting over much of this. Okay. Nice smooth brush strokes. We're going to do some new applications today on how we blend colors on the canvas. It's going to be really fun and different. I can't wait to share with you these new techniques. You gotta have a little patience, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Now this horizon line where my mountain is, I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. I'm just saying, okay, it looks like a horizon line. It may not be exactly what I want it to be, but it's good because I have my sky and my land, and that's the most important thing. We want to make sure this background dries. What we're going to do is we're going to have fun with adding some colors down here to our mountain in the distance. And what I'm going to have you do is grab your yellow paint, put a little bit of yellow on your plate. I'm going to put my brush in my water cup, clean this off. I'm going to get a little yellow, red, yellow, and if you have green, grab a little bit of green. If you don't have green, we can make green. We're going to be a little abstract of like what we're going to put where. You can also think at this point if you want to add any water in this space, you can add water. So I have blue on my plate if I want to add any water. So I'm just getting some paints on my plate, yellow, red, blue. Let's see what I have for green. Okay. A little bit of green. And we're letting our sky dry, okay? Very intentional. And I might take a little bit of the black and put a little bit of black, small dot of black on my plate too. So if you look at the inspiration has incredibly beautiful trees kind of peppered throughout. And one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna have fun with some placements of color. So this is gonna be really fun and different. One of the first things that we're gonna do is we're gonna create some shading in the distance of the mountain in the background, and we're gonna create a little bit more brightness up front. So you can grab a brush of choice. This is one of the 1/2 inch kind of round tip brushes, very user-friendly here. I'm gonna get a little bit of water on this brush, and I'm gonna mix a little bit of a dark green. So I have a little bit of green right here. I'm gonna take a scoop of this green. I'm gonna move it over here. This is my black. I'm just gonna grab a little dot of black. I'm gonna mix that around. I'm going for a little bit darker of a green, contrasting green. This is like a shadowed green color. So in the distance, in this mountain, there are green trees, dark green trees in the distance, and it's a little more shaded. Okay, so there's a dark green. And there's gonna be other colors back here too, but I'm gonna create a subtle blend, like a subtle transition from my mountain or my hill. And I just did a line kind of in the middle, and it can be uneven, that's fine. But this is a little bit of a guidance for us saying this back hill is going to be a little bit darker than the front side of this hill. The front side of this hill is going to be a little bit lighter of a green. So I'm just using the edge of this brush on the flat side to say, hey Megan, let's add a little bit of shading to this side. And this is where you can be a little playful. Maybe you have some layers or some patterns. You can use the darker green color to create some different forms in your landscape. So we're just adding a little bit of color and a little bit of shading. You can see I have some white spots. You can see these simple layers I added are really giving this single layer some depth, some change in the landscape. So experiment with this a little bit. Hold some white space. So holding white space is not painting this all in, but we're having fun here. So add some fun layers. Stay above this middle green line. Okay. And you're probably thinking, well, how much white space do I leave? We're going to be filling this whole area in with color, but we're going to be using different types of colors. So we're going to fill this in a little bit more abstract. Maybe if you want to make this a little darker, grab a little bit of black. Create a few like darker areas, a few darker patches. We're going to add a lot more detail to this, so it's not going to look so plain Jane. But if you wanted to add any other darker contrasting areas, feel free. And maybe take a little bit of your regular green. If you need to mix green, it's yellow and blue mixed together. Some of you may have already figured that out. But I'm just going to bring in a little bit of this lighter green just to see what happens. Just a little bit of a touch in some of these whiter spaces. We're going to add a lot of oranges and reds for tree colors. But I'm just being playful on how I'm filling in this space. I'm probably going to want to keep it darker, but it's okay to be playful on how you fill things in, because that's how we learn. That's how we kind of do things outside of the norm with our pictures. As an artist playing with dark and light colors, you can see what happens. You can experiment. See how that's primarily darker, but there's a few lighter hues of greens here and there. That's what I wanted. Okay. And then from the bottom area, I might add some like kind of fun, kind of tree-like texture. I'm literally just being playful at this time. But you can see how I'm adding in it's a lighter green. So this is like grass green. And I'm just applying this space, like there's going to be a lot of trees down here, vertical trees. And you can see my brush strokes are pretty thick. That's okay. But I'm leaving white space because I'm going to be putting in other colors. So we're going to be doing like more deliberate trees, but this you can see really is breaking up the two areas. This is kind of like a hillside in the background, and then this is like kind of a forest in the foreground. So these are all base colors. They're just going to get us going. We're going to come in and make this look more realistic. So don't worry too much. But what I'm going to have you do is I want you to think about where you want to put colored trees down here. And this is the fun part. I put in many green trees, aka lines where trees may go. I'm going to grab a little bit of, I'm going to do orange. So I have a little yellow, a little red. And this is where I want you just to kind of take your time and experiment in your own way. There's your orange. And I'm just going to ever so slightly, the trees on the bottom are a little taller, but these trees, as you get closer to the line back here, are farther away. So I want you to do smaller little dashes. See how these are smaller back here? That means they're further away. Play with the placement of some of these objects. They kind of look like carrots, which is really funny. But I'm going to take a little bit of yellow. Maybe I'll just dab in a little bit of yellow. kind of, looks like a very abstract painting. We're all going in the right direction here. This is just a different approach. And then maybe I'll tuck in a few red trees. And we're gonna do the same thing for the distance. There's gonna be lots of colored trees in here too, but we're just kind of setting the tone. So you can see I'm just using the tip of this brush just to like put in some colored trees. And we'll make these look like more like canopies. So if you wanted to kind of make them look like more like tree canopies, you can. So remember the trees in the foreground down here are bigger. See how these are bigger canopies? You can make them into canopies. This is all about experimentation. So keep the trees against the line up here tiny. So I'm not making any big canopies here. But I have quite a few red. Maybe I go back to my orange. So do I want to add any orange style canopies? Because the neat thing is that I'm going to come in here with a detailed brush and we're going to add more like leaf-like shapes, and we'll add branches and tree trunks and all that. But you can see how it's really creating some beautiful layering of colors. Now if you need to add more green in here, pepper some more green in. So for me, I'm just going to do some green brush strokes just to kind of fill in the bottom. But you can see this fun look that's starting to happen. So anywhere I have white space down here in the bottom, I'm just going to pepper in with green because I feel like I have a nice array of color happening for these trees down here. Maybe with just like the tip of the brush. I want you to be happy with the array of color you have for your foliage trees. One of the ways I like to think about that is a balance of color from the left to the right side of the canvas. Some of this is a little impressionistic, so I want you to be happy with the number of yellow trees you have. So before you come in with the green like me, I want you to look at the balance of yellows, look at the balance of reds. You can always let this dry and come back in, which is absolutely fine, but try to hold that space with that primary color first if you can. But I'm just dancing around some of these colors. I'll probably come in again after, just letting this dry. But you can see what we've created. It could look like flowers to you. These are just basic forms. We're gonna come in with our detailed brushes, create canopy of trees, more detailed. But you can see we're holding this space for color for foliage. So use your imagination. You can start to see this come out a little bit. Okay. If at any point you need to pause this video to take more time, feel free to do that. But I'm not striving for perfection down here. I'm striving for a balance of color. I want green to be like my fill-in color, right? This is the woods, this is a field, this is a whole hillside. Those are the choices you can make. Our mountain is drying. I want this to dry. And we're gonna pivot to the sky. So we're gonna change gears entirely since our sky is dry. That will allow all of this down here to dry. And the sky is a whole nother area, which is gonna be so fun. So again, pause the video, just do a basic coat of color down here. Take a deep breath. Whew. We'll be switching to our sky as our next step. The reason that we're doing that is the sky has its own presence in this picture. We could focus solely on this mountain, but I want to make sure the space is entirely dry before we do too much. So the fact that we have these base colors, we're going to let it sit, dry. We're going to focus on our sky, and then we'll come back down here. Sound good? Okay. So we do things with intent, believe it or not. So I'm just cleaning off my brushes. And the sky is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The sky is gonna be something we've never ever done before in this class, and I'm so excited to jump into it with you. Now, I want you to find a brush that you can apply color, but you're gonna need a secondary brush. I'm gonna use this medium tip brush. You could also use that rounded tip brush I was just using. I'm going to use this one just to see how it goes. This is kind of a flat-headed, smaller, medium-sized brush. The reason I like this brush is because it has a nice flat head on it. It's not a brand new brush, but it still will give me the control over the edging that I need for the sky. Okay. So one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to create the cloudy part of the sky. So the left side of the sky is a little moody. And then all of a sudden the sun is going to break on the right and start shining across the sky. So we need the moody shaded colors in first before we do the bright and brilliant. Okay? So we're going to be doing a dark blue in the sky, a little moody. But we're going to be doing some fun blending techniques to make this work. And this is going to be a little scary, but it'll be super fun. So you're going to grab a brush of your choice here. Then I want you to grab another big brush that you have at home. So for me, I have like this big brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply paint with this brush. And we're going to use this dry brush to blend in the clouds, to have them be very soft and blended. So you're gonna need a dry brush. We're not gonna put any paint on this. We're gonna use this to blend in paint like this. Okay? Gonna be really cool. So a brush to apply paint and a brush to apply to smudge and swirl and make it look like clouds. Okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a dark navy blue color. So I have a little bit of blue here. I have a little bit of black. If you like for these clouds to have a purple tinge, hey, might as well. You can grab a little bit of red. In these classes, you always have choices of what colors you want your clouds to be, etc. So you can add a little bit of, oh, I love a little bit of red in there. It gave me a little bit of a purple. I don't have very much paint right here. I don't need that much. Let's grab a little bit more red. Let's see what happens. Ooh, all right. Just making sure I have enough of this. I don't want to run out, so I'm just making enough. We're not putting in too many dark clouds, but it's better to have more paint than not enough. So I have like a dark purplish blue going on right here. Excited about it. So we're going to be doing some dark clouds, and I want you to figure out where your light source is. So for me, the light source for me, where the sun is going to be coming up, it's going to be on this whole side. So the clouds are really going to have like a starburst effect, kind of like this. So we'll just get started and then we can make some modifications. So I want you to create a little bit of like a cloud burst effect. So I'm kind of creating clouds that are coming out and around. And what we're going to do is while this is still wet, this is where we experiment. You could start moving this around. You could dip your brush in a little bit of water and move this. We're creating some kind of darkness in the sky. So this looks kind of funny. Don't worry. You can see I used a little bit of water. I'm just creating a little bit of darkness. So I'm creating a little bit of some shading. You can get some more paint on your brush. If you don't want to do the smearing, you could just kind of do some cloud-like forms. You can use your finger to smudge. We're going to be painting over some of this, so don't worry too much. I want you to still see some of the light blue. See how it's creating a little bit of a darker shade? That's what we want. The water isn't helping that much, so I would steer away from the water if you want. But you can, I want you to add, and keep this horizon like fairly light, so don't come down too far over here. But you can do some nice long skinny light clouds. I like doing those long skinny clouds. And you're probably asking, well, how far do I come over? We're creating some dark blue clouds in the sky. And the inspiration is actually much darker, so we're just starting things out here. But create some moodiness happening over here, and do it any way that you want. You can see they're fairly straight over here, but there's this change in pattern that's kind of happening. So you can see I'm starting to add just some of the moody clouds. They're going to come over a little bit, but I'm going to put some reds and pinks and purples over here. You can see I'm holding blue space. So this might be a little scary. Don't just embrace the process. Just know that we're going to continue to evolve this. This is a lot of layers happening today. But the sky is meant to be darker. Okay, I know we started with a light blue, but the intent was to cover a lot of this up for the colors. So even though we're getting a little darker, don't worry. It's all gonna change, I promise. So you can see I can still see some of the light blue. Very important. That's why we did that, right? We're gonna add more. If there's a lot of brush strokes, don't worry. We're gonna add more as we go. Okay. And it's gonna get much lighter halfway over. So I am not going any dark on this side. I'm only doing a little, I'm gonna keep this all light over here. So I'm not gonna do any more dark past the center point. And anywhere there's dark up here, it's really just gonna be a shadow kind of in the background. So I might put a little water on my brush. This will help you kind of blend everything together. Put a little water on your brush to help kind of smooth some of these cloud shapes. If you need to grab a smaller brush, feel free. If you want to try that dry brush effect, you can kind of use this to kind of blend in. This is optional, but it kind of helps blend it in a little bit. I don't want you to cover up the blue, so be careful about how much you're doing here, but it will kind of help with the smudging just a little bit. See how it softened that? You can always bring in more light blue in here if you need to. So we'll do a lot of touch-up work over here. So don't worry too much if it looks like a mess. Some of you are probably like saying, Megan, this looks like a mess. Don't worry. Trust the process, I promise. All right. So you can kind of play with your cloud-like shapes. Maybe grab a little bit more paint. Again, water will help. All good. So it's in this middle area is where we're going to start to transition to some of our pinks and our oranges. So even though this looks a little messy, make sure you take your colors all the way off the page. That will allow your sky to look like it's really just like expanding all the way over. Really important. So I just push that all off the page. Perfect. We're gonna bring in lots of beautiful colors kind of coming in over here, like some oranges and pinks. So again, trust the process. Know that the sky is something different. It's good to do different things, but the contrasts are really what's gonna blow you away. Now we're gonna let the blue dry. You'll have time to come back to it, but I'm gonna show you, we're gonna highlight some of the brightness down here, okay? So you can see the sky it's really parting here in the middle. We're gonna have the dark clouds are kind of separating. It has this upward like sprawl. We're gonna come down here and start to add some of the brightness so you can see where we're going, okay? So we're gonna let the blue dry. I'm gonna clean my brush. If you need to pause the video, feel free. I'm cleaning my brush well because I'm putting yellow and white on this brush. If you want to switch brushes and just use a brand new brush entirely, feel free. You can use any brush that you want here. But I'm going to first start by making a lighter yellow. So I have a scoop of yellow right here, and I have some white. I'm going to mix yellow and white together. Yellow's our friend. And what we're gonna do is, this is gonna be magical. Right here above the whole top of the mountain, we're gonna outline this with yellow, all right here. This is all beautiful brightness. So this is like the parting of the clouds. And I want you just to do a little bit of an imaginary line or space on where should be bright in your picture. So I did a little bit of a line right here. Ooh, all this is going to be beautiful and bright. So you can use yellow, you could use white. Just create a little bit of an outline. See this line that I just did here? Start to fill some of this in. So this is beautiful brightness cresting over the mountain. I have white on my brush because it's helping kind of cover up the blue. Maybe it's making it a little brighter. But this is some of the piece that's going to be really awe-inspiring. You can play with having some lighter yellows in here and some darker yellows, or some lighter yellows and some like actual bright yellow. You might see some green in here because you're putting yellow over blue. Don't worry about that right now. Just get a base coat of yellow in this space because this is the beautiful brightness. And I want to make sure you cast a little bit of this yellow just over the top of the hill. Have a little bit of this just kind of stream. And the yellow down here needs to dry because we're creating brightness, but we are also going to be doing another coat of paint on that and really bringing it to life. So we're really just doing a step by step at this point. So this is where it's going to get really fun. Our blue is drying, which is good because if we put our yellow anywhere near our blue, it's going to turn to be green. And we don't want any green in the sky. Like, let's be totally frank. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly start to mix oranges and pinks and blend it up into this space. And it's going to fizzle out into our clouds, okay? Into these, darker clouds. So this is the brightness that's coming up over the hillside that's really illuminating the sky. But we're going to do transitional colors together, which is incredibly fun. So I have a little bit of yellow and I have red. So I have a little bit of yellow and I'm going to take a little bit of red and I'm going to create a transitional orange. So it's going to go from yellow to this orange. You can decide, we want this to be a light orange. So if you need to grab a dollop of white for it to be a lighter orange, feel free to do that. So I'm mixing a light orange together, kind of a creamsicle color. I'll probably make it a little more orangey as we go here. But a orange, a light orange. And just take the time to find the right color. And this is where I want you to be in control over your brush strokes. I want you to have a narrow brush stroke. So this will work if I'm holding it on the side. One of the things we're going to do is where the sun is coming up, which is right about here, I'm going to come down and we're going to start to create some of these natural beams. See this orange? Kind of giving it a little bit of an angle. Have little pieces of orange start to trickle in. Don't do like a full brush stroke. See how I'm doing little tiny pieces? So pretty. So you're going to start to get the vision here as we go. So we're going to start to bring this orange up into our sky. See, I'm creating some really fun shapes here. You can do as much or as little of this as you wish. Try to hold a little bit of blue space here or there. I'm starting to bring in a little bit of the orange coming into the blues. You can play with the angles of your brush. I'm going to just start to trickle in a little bit of oranges, softening this blue over here. So maybe on the underside. Oh, and I grabbed just a darker orange. So you can see, you can transition to a darker orange. But be really gentle with your hand. You can see what's happening here. Try not to cover up all the blue. I'm being really intentional to try not to cover up the blue. But I want you to transition from doing soft oranges to doing darker oranges. So play with your colors. Ooh, comes a darker orange. These are clouds. You can be fun, thoughtful, creative. These have a little bit of angle on them. This is your fiery sky. So embrace this process, but we're transitioning to different colors. Don't paint over any of the lighter oranges. We're doing like a sequential blend here. But you can play with how they kind of complement one another. And these are all base coats, so we're gonna do more colors on top of this, but this is just to kind of get you going. And then you can bring in like a fuchsia anytime you're ready. So in the inspiration, it goes from yellow to light orange to like a fuchsia color. To make fuchsia, it's red and a little bit of white. And I'm just going to bring in, so this is not dark enough. So let's see. This is pretty, this is darker. So that might work. So I'm just gonna start, and you can do soft, kind of light-handed brush strokes for some of this like wispy cloud look. You can kind of follow some of these clouds too if you wanted to follow some of these clouds. This is all really experimental. As you come over, you want to use a light hand. And you're gonna create some pink layered clouds on top over here. So you're not gonna do a ton, but you're just gonna start to create new cloud layer. So imagine you're doing like a dusting of color, soft hand to kind of create some extra and some new cloud shapes. So you're gonna pay attention to leaving some of the background color to still come through. The dark contrasts are good. We want these dark contrasts to come through. You can cover up some of it, but try to keep some areas where you can still see it. See how this looks a little piecey? That's good. You can see how the brightness of our sky is changing. It's like moody to bright, and this is an evolution, so we're not done yet. But you can see how this is evolving, which is really fun. You can always put a little bit of water on your brush. Now this pink is gonna come all the way over here, and I'm doing a really soft hand. It kind of allows me to play with, I'm not doing thick, heavy brush strokes. I'm kind of doing playful, soft brush strokes. Maybe I'll put a little water on my brush. You can play with how these colors start to blend and how much coverage of paint you want. That's really where this is going. So with a little water on my brush, if I want more pink coverage, with a little water, I can kind of start to fill in the clouds a little bit. And we'll add some depth to our clouds. But we're just kind of playing with how the color shows up, like where the color shows up, how it shows up. And I transitioned to all these colors pretty quickly just because I wanted you to see the evolution. You can come back in and you can play with where these colors are showing up in your sky. So for me, I can come in here and play with, well, how does this orange cloud show up in my sky? Right here. Switch brushes if you need to. Okay. Use your eye. Feel empowered to play with these colors. We will make this a little like whiter down here. So it's like very bright. So like we'll add more white down here so it's a little bit brighter, but you can play with the transition of these colors. So if you're thinking about your pinks, just let your pinks dry and say, okay, maybe I'll go back to my oranges and do some layering of color. You can see I'm being really strategic about having a light orange with a darker orange. And maybe I'll just do like a little cast of yellow up here just to see what happens. But this is your sky. can play with figuring out where you want to bring in pinks. So having little tiny clouds just kind of like be peppered in. Maybe putting a little, I peppered in a little pink cloud down here. There's really a lot more pink coverage in the inspiration, so let's just do a little bit more pink coverage. I'll just show you by just being daring here in the middle of like how much pink coverage there actually is. There's a lot of pink here in the middle. And this, again, you're painting layers upon layers, so just kind of take your time on letting a layer dry and come back into it and coming in and doing more. A lot of my clouds are very like jet stream like there's not a ton of like fluffiness. So you can make choices on doing like long lines like I did, but you can also come in and add some shape. So let me just show you like where you could add a little bit of shape. So you can come in and add some rounded areas. In the inspiration, it's all very smooth. So if you like the smooth look, you're just gonna keep layering and just do some nice smooth brush strokes for coverage. It might look not so smooth yet because we just don't have enough paint on here. So just be mindful of that. Art is an evolution. We say that a lot in these classes. And I'm just creating some intentional areas. And I'm covering up, this is a lot of pink in the middle because it's really brightening here and it's coming up and out. So this is where I want you to play with your sky. You can make this as bright or as little, like as soft and subtle as you wish. Feel free to change brushes. But I want you to be happy with like where you have colors. And this, folks could spend a really long time on this. So just be open-minded to where you can take this. Okay. You can do some second coats. So a second coat in areas, especially where you may see like green coming through down here. Put a little bit of white, a little bit of yellow on your brush and come in and just do some second coats. Help you play with the structure. You can do long singular brush strokes. See how I just brightened that all right there with a little white and a little bit of yellow. And I'll do the same thing here. Where I have this lighter orange, I'm just going to do a second coat. And I'm being careful, I'm leaving blue here. And I can always add blue back in too, which is kind of nice. I can kind of reshape the sky coming back through if I want to. So this is like a very open-minded, brilliant, beautiful sky. You got to think a little bit outside the box. But it's challenging us to use and blend different colors. And it's giving you choices. And if I want to bend this down and out, I can bend this down. It can reshape the glow. So if and you can see it's starting to smooth over a little bit. That's terrific. You can always reshape how your sky is going. Like if I want to open this up, look at, I'm bending some of these down here to really create some glow out and over. So this art is all your own perception on how you want to manage the shape and flow. And with just simple coats of paint, you can restructure how your sky is shining, where you bring in pink. You can easily bring more pink in up here after, right, for additional layering. So really fun, right, the transitions here. it's different, but it's fun to play with the gradual of color. If you're interested in making like a trifecta, like a purple color to kind of help with any of the transition, you could totally make like a purple to kind of soften some of this pink in here. Love that idea. It's really helping to kind of stream it outwards. Maybe you blend it in to some of the blue. That actually helped with the smoothness, right? I have a little purple on my brush. The purple will help really blend this pink into the blue. Love that. But as you step back, you can really reflect on, you know, what's going on. I'm going to get a little bit more red. All right. So this is the point of the class where I am not going to rush you. I want you to let an area dry. I want you to think about what you have. Some of you may say, Megan, there's a lot of brush strokes. It may look messy. Let it dry. Think about the placement of your colors. Think about the shapes you have. The shapes of your clouds, the direction of your clouds, the color of your clouds. Maybe you want your clouds to be a little bit more like red or fiery. Or maybe you want them to be more like cloud-like shaped. Like, you can make some of these choices. I just brought in like a reddish color, and the tops of these clouds, maybe there's a little bit more structure to some of these red clouds or pink clouds. Right? You can play with that. In the inspiration, they're very soft and they kind of just trickle over one another. So it's really just about finding a style that works for you. If you want to have more structure versus like this fiery situation, what you can do is you can really create like more of a cloud body. So I'll create a little bit of more of a cloud body here. So maybe that's a cloud right there. Maybe I want to soften it. Maybe it's too much of a form. You can make some of those choices. I can come in here after and like restructure that. It's no big deal. But use these horizontal areas to kind of bring and continue the color. It'll really help stream these clouds out. And use the bottom of these clouds can be straight, but try adding like some of the cumulus kind of styles on top. And we can always come in and pepper more light blue in here too. That might help you if you have a lot of darkness and a lot of brush strokes. So just take a deep breath and enjoy the process. Again, trying something new is always fun. I'm gonna see how I can play with my colors. Again, I'm trying to go for like a softened approach here. And I'll probably bring in a little bit of light blue to really just have the sky come through in some areas. And you could really just, if you wanted to smooth things over, you could really just smooth things. If you do a lot of single brush strokes like that, it's gonna cover up some of the darker details behind, which there's pros and cons. You're not getting some of that dark cloudiness coming through. So I do just a little bit of that smudging. And I come in here, maybe if there's a lot of pink here, I can bring in a little bit of orange. Just to kind of soften the situation, help with the transition. And they don't have to be like fiery, like long skinny brush strokes that I'm doing. You can do kind of more cloud-like structure. And sometimes it might be helpful to bring in a little bit more of the shaded areas if you've lost any of it. So over here I have just like a lot of bursting color, which is fine. However, let me just go grab a little bit of this darker purple again. And let me show you what it's like just to bring in a little bit of this dark purple. So you could bring in a little bit of this darker purple again to create some shaded spaces. So I'm creating some kind of gaps in my clouds, maybe where you have too much color. So I'm using my finger to smudge. So I just broke up the sky a little bit there. It broke up the sky. So if you needed to add any of this back in, using a thin brush is a good idea. My brush is a little thick, but this is just an example. And maybe I'll bring in a little bit of this in here just to break up this pink area. So you can see I'm using my finger and I'm just bringing these darker colors in to just break up some of the pink. So if you feel like you have pink or things in too many, like an area that's just too much, bring in the darker color to help cover it back up again. Totally optional. I don't really like the pink up here, so guess what? I can just cover it up and smudge it in. So you can really manage what's going on in your picture by making some modifications. It's all good. Okay? But lean back in your chair. Say, what areas do I like? What areas do I want to modify? Okay? And for me, I have a little bit too much pink over here. I really want this to stay pretty moody, so I'm going to cover up some of this pink over on this edge. This is just a personal decision. But the nice thing is I can always bring in a little bit more of the light blue again. Smudge a little bit of light blue in to create some highlights. So you can play with adding in light blue. If you need to add any, if you're too dark over here, or even if you want to add in a little bit of light blue near your pink, feel free to grab a little bit of your light blue and smudge it in with your finger and see what happens. That allows the sky to kind of come through. So I might add a little bit of light blue right in here to create a little bit of extra brightness. So again, you're in control here of some of these details, but I want the sky to really just kind of take flight. I brought in a little bit of extra yellow, so you can kind of manage where things really change in your sky. So we'll spend another just 5 minutes playing with this sky just for right now. And then we'll transition back to the trees. So I love this inspiration because it's super different. I'm adding a little bit of brightness to the sky up here, like a little bit of light yellow. But it's challenging us to think about how we play with colors. It's also forcing us to do layers. We don't always take the time in these classes to play with layers. So a little bit of light yellow with a flat brush. I have a nice flat edge on this. Can really help pull out some of these layers. Okay. The darks and the lights of the contrast will really start to draw your eye. So play with that a little bit. But again, I love this because it's forcing us to play with our layers. We don't always do techniques like this. And it is good for our creative practice to try these new things because it's going to allow you to be a little more comfortable in future classes on adding additional layers to areas. And you can see how nicely this transition's happening. And one of the things why this is working is because we did our light yellows to light oranges to pinks, okay, etc. But I also kept in some brighter areas. I have a light blue in here. I have some lighter areas. That's allowing the contrast and for that shine to happen. If you need to come in and add some like skinny light blue lines for your sky to come through, I encourage you to come in and add that. Please do. And I'm using I could definitely be using a thinner brush stroke here. Switch brushes is not a bad thing. Play with different brushes along the way. And I'm being intentional of kind of highlighting. If you want to make this kind of more bright and brilliant in spaces, this is your picture. You can. It's really like orangey and pink and moody on this side. There is more of this like cotton candy like orange color, which I'll make in a minute. Again, this is an evolution of color. There's a touch of cotton candy orange on top of this. And what we'll do is I'll use a corner of a paper towel to dab on that technique. So sometimes in these classes we use paper towels, which is really quite handy. I'm going to make a cotton candy orange, and I'm going to use the corner of a paper towel to dab on another layer of detail. So we've done clouds before in these classes where they have had just like a nice soft appeal to them. This is a very vibrant cotton candy orange I'm going for. Find, based on the paint colors you have, how to make this. So I just made a color. It came out a little mucky, so I'm just going to start over. And I'm going to grab I'm just going to grab a clean brush to make some of this. But I am going to use a paper towel to dab it on, which will be really fun. So let's just start over here, and I'm going to try to make a cotton candy orange. I happen to have a pink right here, so let's just see if I can make it with this pink. And the cotton candy orange is just like an orange with a little bit of pink in it. It's kind of like a nice subtle layer. Kind of like creamsicle with a touch of pink. I think this is pretty close. So find a color that works for you. I'll make it a little more pink. Let's just see what happens here. There we go. So this is, again, a little bit of patience, just finding a color that works for you. And if you wanted to try this paper towel trick to like add cloud-like texture to your sky, you can. Okay, I'm gonna keep this brush handy. I'm gonna grab a corner of a paper towel. My paper towel is going to be dry. It's not gonna be wet. I'm just going to wipe some of the paint on this paper towel. I'm going to use this to do my dabbing. Okay, so I'm going to take this paper towel, kind of make it into a ball, and I have paint on it. And you can manage the shape of this paper towel. I'm going to do some kind of soft, and this is going to work great. Soft clouds to accent some of the pink area. And you can see it's already making it look nice and smooth. You may need a couple coats of this, but it's just really going to help with some of the transition of colors. It's going to start to blend and layer on. Now, if you want to add a little bit of white to this, it might help it stand out a little bit better on some of the, ooh, that was really light. So that's a lot of white paint. You don't want to do that. Happy experimenting. So I'm just going to blend this in, and I'm just really playing with adding in some, this is really light in color, but you can play with bringing in some pinks. Again, play with the tip and the shape of your paper towel. This, if you really don't like kind of what you've done, this is a good way of kind of just adding a subtle kind of facade over it. You could do some soft smudging. Soft smudging. I'm trying not to totally kill what I've already done. This is really just kind of like a little bit of a subtle layer on top to complement it. You can see it is smoothing it. So if you like the smoothing effect, change the shape, make it tinier if you wanted to have smaller kind of bands. Kind of let it dry, move it around. See how that changed it a little bit? I'm probably gonna let it dry a little bit and come back to it with my orange. So this is a little bit pinky, but you can see how there is a little bit of orange in here. This is your picture. So you can really have fun. You can see I'm getting a little abstract. I kind of like that the way this is like creating this fun burst. This is where art is just gonna happen. So you can see that I've done a lot of different colors. But now I'm just being present. Your art will change, and it's okay for your art to change. I'm playing with bringing in pinks. I'm playing and bringing with, this second texture is really beautiful for the sky, and I think it's a great addition. You can do some smudging and dabbing. I'm doing both. You can use your finger if you want to use your finger. You're going to get a different texture with your finger, so consider that, right? But this is your sky. It can be anything that you want it to be. Maybe you take a little bit of this dark paint and you come in here and you just create a little bit of extra contrast. Look at that, into some of this cloud to reshape it. I'm using my finger just to show you. This is just some of the soft subtleties of playing with where your darks and your lights show up, right? So you can play with your finger. I have a ton of colors happening here. See what's going on here. Let an area dry, come back to it. All right. So I'm having fun. I really want to keep this part of the sky darker, so I keep adding color over there. I don't want to do that. So I can easily cover things up, right? I have a little bit of this on my finger. You can kind of slowly soft to like reshape things. You can use your paper towel, manage that. I do like that there is still kind of some contrast over here. So I lost some of the contrast, so I'm just gonna come in ever so slightly. Add a little bit of this contrast back in. Okay. So we can spend as much or as little time here on the sky as we wish. We'll do a couple final touch-ups on the sky. Consider using a small brush and consider where you could add light blue to create any additional highlighting points. So that contrast piece. So I'm going to grab a tiny brush and I'm just going to show you what you could do. This could make an area look way better. It could add brightness. Excuse me. You could add brightness in a certain space. So I have a little bit of light blue I'm mixing right here. Maybe I want a little bit of extra light blue just to kind of come through right in this area. And I'm using the paintbrush for the light blue to come through. You see that? Brilliant. Maybe right here on the inside of this cloud, it's just going to be a little bit of light blue. Maybe I'll just smudge that in. Okay. Maybe there's a little light blue coming in up here. Maybe I smudge that in. The light blue is the background sky. So if you feel like you have lost your sky, come in and add a little bit of light blue with a really light hand. Look at that. I'm bringing my sky back into this picture. okay? I might even bring a little bit of light blue. I would add a little water to that, but you can even bring it into the darker area if you wanted to. So this picture is all up for your own interpretation. A little water on your brush over in that darker space. It's like, oh yeah, look at that, so pretty. You're gonna get to a spot where you're like, Megan, I'm close. Megan, I don't know what's going on in this painting. But it's good to try new things. Always. Always, always. And I'm just dancing in a little bit of light blue over here just to see what happens. You can always change it. I have a lot of brightness going on. I really like how this is light down here. There's not, I don't have a ton of structure in this area up here. So if I wanted to add more structure, you could use a brush, you always can. I could add more like cloud-like structure. Like maybe on the, I make these a little more like rounded in some areas. So I'm just doing this with a brush, with a little bit of orange. Trying not to make it look like a peacock with feathers, you know, trying to stay focused. Definitely turn this into a wild and crazy sky though, that's for sure. But using your brush to kind of help with any of your shaping, it's not a bad idea. If you need to, you may not need to. But add a little bit more shaping and movement up here. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more. Anywhere you need to add any contrast, like darker contrast, maybe up at the top. I'm gonna have this be a little more darker contrast up here at the top because I want my eye to go to this beautiful bright area down here. So I'm going to make this area, this top corner is a little light for me. I'm just adding a little bit of this darker kind of purple light color. See how it's really just kind of refocusing the eye to the brighter spaces. You can easily direct the eye. And you can easily use dark or light colors. Maybe you like a little bit of white highlighting. Those are all personal choices. There's ways of like highlighting each of these layers with like darker accents. You can see I'm using like a little bit of a darker purple just to kind of like highlight the underside of some of this. If you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but a little bit of darker contrast, subtle, could be a really cool thing. So you could make this, and I'm using just the tip of the brush. It's creating some fun layers. This is a little too dark. So I'm gonna being really playful, lots of layers. That's the point of today's class, is to play with the layering. We're gonna do the same thing with the trees. So I'll transition in just 1 minute to down to the trees. But we've played with a lot of different texturing, the paper towel, using the tip of a brush, doing some lighter and darker contrasting. And you can see the sky is really quite brilliant. It's different, it's bright. You can continue to work on it. We're not putting anything else on top of the sky. We're not putting a big tree up there. You don't need to worry about that. And we'll slowly transition back down to the bottom, which will be quite fun. So I can have you wash all your brushes, and we're gonna find a small brush of choice to do some of the tree-like detail. So a tiny brush of choice. Let's see here. I have just like a small, this is a number 2, any kind of brush will work. And we'll have fun with some of the tree detail down here at the bottom. So you can find an orange that you may have on your plate. and pick one of these orange tree-like shapes down here. Bring this back a little bit, show you. And then you can really start to play with filling in, this is kind of a red color. Okay, so I'll go to my red tree. This is like a reddish orange color. So I'm gonna start to fill in some of the doing little leaves just for some fun texture on top. So find an orange, do an orange tree. Find a red, do a red tree. We're adding texture. You can also kind of bop between colors, which is really fun, but we're doing texture on the colored areas. So I'm just using the tip of this brush. I don't really like this brush, so I want you to be happy with the brush you're using. So if you're not happy with the brush you're using, change your brush. It's no big deal. Make sure you like the colors that you're using. So I'm just mixing a nice orange, reddish orange, and I'm going to use just the tip of the brush. Let's see, what color is this? This is an orange, so I'm going to find little orange trees. And I'm just going to fill these trees out with this a little texture. I'm going to bring these trees to life. And we'll do some branches and stuff after, but we're just kind of filling in this color together. Now, I need to make the right oranges and reds, so maybe I'll do red first since I have red right here. My orange is it's not the right orange for me, so I'm just going to start with the red and I'll use the tip of the red brush. And I like to outline the canopy of the tree first. And then I'm just filling it in. And you can see this layering is important. You want to fill in maybe some of your red trees are tall. Maybe some of them are wide. You can see how those red trees are really starting to stand out. That's exactly what we want. We're doing a second coat of color for these red trees. So find all those little red areas. And you can see those red trees are really starting to jump out. We're going to use a tiny brush to put tree trunks. But layer your red trees. Have some that are high and some that are low. You can see how the red ones are starting to stand out. I want to also being considered a placement. Some of these are wider, like big maples compared to like a little maple down here. Some are high, some are low, which is really fun. So this is a little abstract, but we're going to add some more detail. You could also, for the detail work, instead of using a brush, you could use a black ink pen. I might show you what that looks like. Could be really a nice touch for today's class. Sometimes folks don't have tiny brushes, but you can see the colors. This is all really beautiful and coming together. It's complementing our beautiful sky. Okay, if you still have a tiny red brush, you can start to kind of do a little bit of just detail work on the mountain. So I'm just doing little spots of red, and it's a little brighter in this area. So right here where this yellow is, this side of the hill is going to be a little brighter. So we're going to add some oranges there. But imagine there's a little bit of this tree line. See how we did this? I did this line right here. Imagine these red trees in the distance are kind of following the tree line. I'm doing little red dots along this tree line. I might do some orange dots as well. So this is kind of like foliage. If you don't like the way this looks, you don't have to do it. I'm being playful with how we add color into our hillside. So this is a little bit abstract. In the inspiration, there's just like a ton of trees, and we're not going to go into all that detail, but you can be playful with where you bring in touches and sprinkles of color ever so slightly to have it look like foliage. Okay, so this is a little lighter. I might do some lighter touches here. we can always bring in more green. So if you need to have like a better blend of like green coming in, you can. I'm keeping these tiny because, and this is just really complementing some of the work that you've done down here. So you can kind of see visually where this is going. Maybe I'll tuck in a few red leaves down here, which are not leaves, but little trees in the distance. And I'm kind of going back and forth between red and orange. And you can add in, with this picture today, you could add in as much kind of tree-like texturing that you want. So we haven't touched this green space down here on this hillside. You could do the same texture with dark and light green trees, dark green trees, and like I'll just show you. If I wanted to add some darker green kind of contrast dots in here for texture, like it's a forest, I'm doing this with a darker green. So this is another nice kind of touch to add texture to this space versus just keeping it plain, simple brush strokes. See that? See how it adds? You can still see some of the lightness, but it does look like it's a hillside with some darker green trees peppered in. So this is all an evolution. I'm kind of like let this area down here dry, but I wanted to show you what it was like to sprinkle in some color on this hillside in the distance. So I'm using darker green, and I'm just using the tip, and you can go back and forth between like darker green and lighter green. And I'm not cleaning off my brush, but you can see this is giving like some fun shrub-like details. You know, use your imagination. Art isn't always black and white. You can easily kind of go back and forth between what this looks like to you. But I love this texture. It's so pretty. It's so different. If you don't like this, you can totally do something else. I can come in and add some more brightness, but you can see, look at this beautiful picture. This is where it's really all starting to come together. If you need to add more layering in this back hillside, feel free to add some of that darker green contrast like I did here, because you can really see where we're going. We have these beautiful trees that are in the foreground. In the distance, you can see there's some color peppered in, and then our beautiful vibrant sky. It's just really quite breathtaking, especially when you have some of these lighter colors with the contrast. It really starts to pull everything together. So we trust the process. Not incredibly easy, but it's always fun to challenge ourselves to do something outside the box. Always. That's what allows us to grow as artists. And I'm doing these tree detail kind of directly below that darker contrast line. And I'm doing light orange, I'm doing orange. I need to get some more red, but I'm going to be thoughtful about like how much I add and where. I'm not going to go too crazy. I do want there to be a little bit of extra brightness on this hillside from where the sun is coming up, because this is where the light source is. See how it's a little bit lighter right there? It's starting to match and pair with those yellows. And if you wanted to just tuck in just a couple kind of here and there, you can. I'm really going to keep the primary lightness just the top side of this hill here. But I'm going to come down. Again, you can spend as much or as little time as you wish on this painting, but I'm going to come in and bring in some yellows. Yellow and white will stand out nicely. Ooh, yellow and white down here, beautiful. So pretty. You can figure out what the balance is of color for you. You can even add some like whiter contrast down here. I just did that by accident and I think it's kind of cool. My yellow lost its yellow and it just became white. So get some more clean paint on your palette too if you need it. I will show you what a little bit of ink looks like. I am just getting a second coat on some of these trees down here. Again, a little bit of the yellow trees, a little bit of orange trees. I do have a spattering of my green down here too. Green is so important. There's a lot of green trees in this forest. But the yellow from down here will start to also match and pair with the sky. So it's important to kind of continue to manage colors from one space to another. So I have my red trees covered pretty well down here. I'm just going to go through my orange trees and just make sure they have some texture and they're just filled out before I do like the tree-like detail, like the branches and things. So take your time to do that. And then once everything's dry, I'll show you what it's like to I'll do a little bit of black ink. I'll also show you what to use if you want to use a paintbrush. Okay, so I'm just making a little bit more orange. Sometimes you can bring in like that yellowish orange color. Love the yellow orange that you see in the foliage. It's so pretty. Sorry, my red paint was in the way. But look at this. You can see I have a beautiful cluster of trees down here. Amazing. I have yellows, I have reds, I have oranges. So pretty. I could also bring in some more green trees too. And I think this is important. So I'm going to add in a few deliberate green trees just to show you. So I have a spot over here. I could add in a legit like pine tree over here. So I'm just going to do it just to show you right over here. Like I'm going to add a green tree. Deliberate green tree. It's all good. Look at that green tree. If I do one green tree, I got to add in a couple others so my forest matches. So I'm just tucking in a couple of those same kind of colored areas and some other spots. Okay, there's actually like another one over here. So you can play with where you might want to add another green tree or two. Vary the heights. Make sure the bottom is like nice and filled in. Maybe you want to just do some nice contrasting colors just to kind of ground the bottom. You can see I'm using some of this green down here. I want you to be happy with some of the background color. Some of the grounding colors. So I just added some nice dark green contrast down here at the bottom. Just kind of helps ground it. So feel free to do that. But you all can spend, 2-3 hours on this painting. And you can see visually it's really starting to come together. I applaud you for trusting the process and just being a part of the experience. I'm going to let my trees dry because I do want to show you some of the detail-like work. If you wanted to make any other modifications to your sky, feel free. Also the peppering here of the foliage in the back hill. But you can see here where I have the light and the dark contrasts for that space as well. And I'll give that a minute to dry. Feel free to continue to work on the details that you're working on. And I'll grab a black ink pen. To show you what a little bit of black ink detail looks like on some of these trees. So I have a red tree over here that's dry. I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm going to use a black ink pen to draw a trunk, draw some primary branches, some secondary branches. So there's a nice little tree. If you wanted to do like a little bit of like outlining, to kind of make your tree stand out, you could certainly do something like that, which looks really quite cool actually. You don't have to do this technique for all of your trees, but now that I did it on one, I'm going to do it on more. So you could easily find, you know, just like the tops of some of these trees, putting in just a few branches. Doesn't have to be on all of them, but you could just find a few. I did that little one right there. You could just do little accents. It's kind of just like a little subtlety. I will show you what it looks like. I'm just going to do this outline of this tree right here because there is a clear red maple. Look at the shapes of your leaves, of the patterns that you've added. And you can see how much fun that is. And some of these trees are not perfectly round or straight. It's okay. So that's a little bit of an ink-like detail. The other thing you can do is you can use a small brush of choice with a fine point and with a little bit of black paint. Fine point. You could do the same thing. You could just do, it does exactly the same thing. So you could just do a little bit of outlining. Kind of doing some primary branches. I need a little bit more paint. And paint management, don't have too much paint on the end of your brush. So that's what the black paint looks like on that one right there. The ink gives you a little bit more control, so you can kind of play with that. But I'm going to continue to work on the ink outlines for some of these trees. If you wanted to do any gentle outlining on some of these green rolling hills with a little bit of black paint, could outline some of these rolling hills. These are the choices you can make. You don't have to do this. I'll show you what it looks like. Do you want to do an outline on the top of this big hill, really thin line? I outline the top of this back hill, being really careful with how much paint is on my brush. I'm using a really soft hand. I'm using my pinky to stabilize my hand, highlighting some of these hills in the distance. The contrast is really quite pretty. Really helps kind of for that hillside to stand out a little bit more. Very thin lines on the top of those hills. But I hope that you enjoyed today's picture. Continue working. I'm going to come in with just a little bit of ink-like detail on some of these trees just to make some stand out. I might highlight some of these details in the distance. If you need to come in and add any additional contrast, like some darker green, I'll show you what that looks like really quick. So if you need to add any darker contrast kind of in here behind some of these trees, feel free to come in and add more contrast. Like if it's too light, come in and add a little more contrast so your trees stand out. So this is just a darker green. This darker green is just really adding, casting shadows. So it's all good to add a little bit more of that if you need to. anywhere you want to tuck a little bit of the shadowed green kind of in between some of these trees to make some of your trees stand out, you could do that as well. So I'm just tucking in a little bit of shadowed green just up here. And you can see it just really helps pull some of these colors out on the top of this hillside in the foreground. So you can play with that. But I do hope you share your artwork with me when you're done. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a little challenging, but again, it's really important to practice blending colors, practice letting something just sit and be, and being open to new types of designs and inspirations. But thank you again for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's class, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.